Dark Souls bosses. Bloodborne, Demon Souls, Sekiro, Dark Souls 1, 2, 3, Elden Ring bosses also. Souls bosses in general. Let's do something nobody has ever done before on this platform. Let's talk about From Software's boss design philosophy. This is so original. There are over 200 bosses and even more, including mini bosses in From Software's so-called Souls games. I'm about to carefully analyze each and every one of them, talk about their flaws, weaknesses, their strengths, strategies, exploits, ways to cheese them. There will be numbers, but I will also mention bosses' importance in the lore and the game's story. As you can already tell by the length of this video, this will be a series rather than just one super extra long video. I love watching long videos. I also love working on longer materials, but I figure out that this content fits ideal into short, compact episodes rather than 1, 3, 4, even 5 hours long video. I will try my best to publish one episode every day, hopefully for the next 200-250 days, depending on how I handle mini and chalice dungeon bosses, and depending on my laziness, of course. Those videos won't be guides on how to defeat each boss, although I will explain most efficient strategies and bosses' movesets in detail. It will simply be much more than just a series of guides. So, what's the plan? I will start with Demon Souls, then move to Dark Souls 1, next will be Dark Souls 2, Bloodborne with all the Chalice dungeon bosses, next Dark Souls 3, Sekiro, and finally I will end with analyzing all of the Elden Ring bosses and mini-bosses. Also, maybe, just maybe, if this thing catches up, I'll be able to get myself a PS5 and talk about Demon Souls remaster bosses, but that's up to the algorithm and my laziness, I guess. Anyways, this video serves as a kind of introduction to this new series. I also wanna lay down some basic terminology and some rules on which I will review, analyze and critique the bosses. But before that, yeah, I am aware that the Dark Souls series, along with Bloodborne, Sekiro and more recently Elden Ring, has already been tagged to death on YouTube. There are entire channels that pretty much make a living of talking about those games. I won't pretend that my views, the way I'll talk about them, had not been influenced by watching or reading essays, analysis, critiques on those games. So in some places I will probably sound like I'm quoting someone. Still, I hope you will find my thoughts on those bosses interesting, and this short video format will appeal to you. As for the laying the basics, there are several types, categories if you will, of bosses that appear in Souls games. The challenge boss. It is meant to be a test of skills. Like Father's coin tests if you adapted your playstyle from slow and methodic Dark Souls to much faster and more aggressive Bloodborne. Challenge boss can also serve different purposes, which I will carefully explore and explain when time comes. There is also a gimmick boss. It might appear as a difficult fight until you discover its weakness. An example would be a huge ballista that two shots the Pursuer in Dark Souls 2. If you decide to ignore the ballista, Pursuer turns into a challenge boss. And finally, there are lore bosses. Bosses that are super important to the story, that spit out exposition, they give important context to the lore. Very rarely, bosses fit into just one category. For example, Mikolash, host of the Nightmare, is definitely a lore boss, but his fight has also some gimmicks to it. Of course, this classification is arbitrary, and the bosses can be grouped in complete different way. They almost certainly should be grouped in a different way than what I just described to you. So when analyzing them, I will also take into consideration boss's difficulty, whether it's a melee or a ranged enemy, the originality, boss's size is also an important factor, how many enemies you fight in an arena, the arenas themselves. There is so much to cover when it comes to boss design, and I can't wait to tell you all about it. So maybe let's jump right into it. Just one more thing. Yeah, I know that there is already a video on YouTube called a review of every Dark Souls boss. So why do this while there already is a review of every Dark Souls boss? Well, firstly, that video only covers the Dark Souls trilogy, without Demon Souls, Bloodborne, Sekiro and without Elden Ring. Secondly, It is much different format than what I'm working on. That video is one huge essay and mine will be short, compact, easily digestible videos. Okay, now I think we are ready to begin this journey. Journey through Boletaria, Lordran, Drangleic, Yarnam, Lothric, Ashina and the lands between.